So today we're going to talk about my top tips for hooking an agent and what that process looks like. So you often hear about the slush pile, and what that means is that lots of agents are open at some point during the year, or sometimes all the time, to receiving unsolicited manuscripts. So that means that we often ask for a cover letter and then a specific sample of material, which we call our guidelines. So at the Bent Agency, we just asked for 10 pages, but when I was at United Talent Agency, we asked for 3 chapters. So just make sure you check what each agent is asking for. So we then read our slush pile, whether that takes us 2 weeks. Sometimes other agencies specify it could be 6 to 8 weeks to get back, or even 8 to 12 weeks. So again, each agent is different. But at the Bent Agency, we aim to respond within 2 weeks. And if I love what I've read so far and I think it might be something that I would want to offer representation on, I'll email you back and I'll ask for the full manuscript. I'll then read your full manuscript and at that stage decide whether I want to offer representation or not. And you'll receive a pass back to say, if it wasn't for me, then a couple of points as to why I made that decision in the end. So if you then sign with me and you officially become my client, I then work on your manuscript until it's in the best possible shape it can be before sending out to editors, so as to give your book the best chance it can possibly have to be picked up and bought by a publisher. So on average, I think agents probably work on 3 drafts from that point with their clients. Sometimes it can be more, up to a year working on a manuscript before submission, or sometimes it could be less. It really depends on how quick the writer can achieve those edits, but really firmly believe that the book should be in its very best form rather than just pushing something out for the sake of it. So I will make sure I work with my clients until it gets to that point. At which stage I will have, throughout, from point of reading the submission really, started coming up with a submissions list, which will be specific editors from all the main publishing houses, including the strong indies that I think this book could be a perfect match for. So it's a bit like matchmaker between your book and the editor. So throughout working on your book with you, I've been pitching your novel to these editors and getting a sense of whether it's a good fit for them or not. And then on the day that we go out, I'll ring round everyone, say, do you remember that book I spoke to you about? It's coming today. So then I send that across, the full manuscript, along with my own pitch letter, and we go from there. And usually we'll hear 2 to 6 weeks back from an editor as to whether they are interested in moving forward or not. Again, these timeframes are very loose. They can be longer and they can happen much quicker, but I think it's a good time frame to keep in mind. So the slush pile, we get, I'd say about 60 to 100 submissions a week. So it's really hard to stand out, but there are some things that you can do to really elevate your cover letter that little bit higher, and in some cases, if it's really good, slip being put on the slush pile and instead read right there and then. So moving on to my cover letter do's and don'ts. Know a bit about the agent you are submitting to, who they represent, what they're looking for. Number 2, say and know what genre your book is and where it sits on the shelf. Have completed your manuscript, that's number 3. Number 4, write a short blurb, style paragraph to really hook us in. Not a synopsis, but just like you would have on the back of a book. And number 5, check each agent's specific guidelines and make sure you attach the correct material. dreaded cover letter don'ts. Try not to be too informal. It is a professional letter. Do send to the specific agent's name. Try to avoid sir or madam, or even sending to the wrong name. It is all on the internet and shouldn't be too hard to find. Number 3, it doesn't help with submission to include feedback from other rejections that you have had. Even if what you're including is positive, it's just not the best way to go about it. Number 4, please don't send me the full manuscript unless I have requested it. So just wait and send me your initial query with those 10 pages unless I've requested more material from you. And finally, try not to include feedback from your family and friends. Okay, so now if we take on board those do's and don'ts, we can go through from start to finish what your cover letter, if you're submitting to me, should look like. So it would be Dear Sarah, not Sir or Madam. Then your next paragraph would tell me the genre you're writing in. So if it's police procedural, psychological thriller, women's crime, romantic comedy, horror, sci-fi, you name it. So you'd say the genre, the title. Title can be really important, and a strong title in your subject line could make the difference between me opening there and then. But so in your first paragraph, also want your title, length of your novel, because you should have finished it. And that's important because if you tell me that your novel is 300,000 words there and then, that probably tells me quite a lot about your novel, as opposed to it being a psychological suspense at 80,000 words. So we've got genre, title, length, and then a couple of comparison titles to show us that you really know where your novel sits in the market, where you would see it if you walk into a bookstore, who it would be next to, what shelves it would be listed on. So that's your first paragraph. Second paragraph should be, like I said in my 5 do's, a short blurb style paragraph. So this would be what you would see on the back of a book. So it's not your synopsis, has more character and tone of voice than your synopsis perhaps does. And it should really give me a taste of what I'm going to read. And so a good way of structuring that is I would start with your character, move on to your setting. What obstacle does your character have to overcome, sort of what propels it on its journey through the story, and finally the resolution. If you really don't want to tell me the big twist at the end, then you can just allude to the resolution. So that's just a good way when you come to write that of approaching the structure of that paragraph. And then if you have a specific reason for writing this novel, or particular inspiration, or something, why you're the writer for it, or what you really want your novel to achieve, that should go next. I would say, don't just write something for the sake of it there, unless you really do have something about why you've written the novel. Just write it if you've got something to say. And then finally, a bit about you. So, it doesn't have to be long, just a couple of sentences. And in amongst that, if you have something about why you have specifically chosen that agent. So, do you know that they're actively acquiring? Do you like one of the authors they represent? Do you know the way in which they work? That they're particularly hands-on editorially and that's something you're looking for. Just something that shows that you really do know who you're submitting to. And that really shows us that you're someone we want to work with too as well. And then say that you've attached the guidelines as requested. So for me, that would be the first 10 pages. Great. And then I don't actually ask for a synopsis in my initial query, but just to touch upon that now, because I know lots of agents do, is usually your synopsis, we'd expect it to just be one A4 page and really easy for us to digest your main plot points. So I like to think that it kind of is your beginning, middle and end. We don't need anything more than just those big main plot points. So if you'd gone to the cinema and then you met up with your friend after and you wanted to tell them what it was about, what would be the main point of that film that you relayed to them? And then apply that to your own novel, because sometimes in your head it's really hard as an author to extract the important points and not be tempted to put everything on the page. But that's really just what we want to see from the synopsis. Great, so good luck, and I hope to see your submission in my submissions inbox in due course.